Right now, I'm rewatching all of the MCU, and while rewatching some of the movies, I was wondering, what was the original idea behind these films? Like, was Thor Love and Thunder really the only idea that Taika Waititi really had? Wasn't there any other thing they could have done? And speaking of that, I was also wondering, there's a lot of lost media regarding films. Some that were in production and never got released, and some that didn't even pass the first step to get greenlit. So that's why I created this video, to not just inform myself, but to inform you guys. Here I have 50 movies, deleted scenes, unused ideas that have been lost through time, 50 unproduced movies that never made the light of day. Please sit down and enjoy this video. Remember to like, comment, subscribe, follow my social medias, and let's just say this video isn't going to be short, so let's not waste time. James Cameron, famous for directing films like The Terminator, Aliens, Titanic, and Avatar, almost directed a Spider-Man movie in the early 1990s. Initially, he was in talks to make an X-Men film with his then wife, Catherine Bigelow, but a discussion with Stan Lee drew his focus to Spider-Man, a character he loved since he was a child. Cameron planned a realistic version of Spider-Man, this time being set in New York City, unlike the other comic books where they use a random made-up city. He aimed for a darker take where Spider-Man swears and deals with teenage issues, reflecting puberty. His origin story was similar to Sam Raimi's later film, but with significant differences, including a genetically mutated spider from a fruit fly, no Harry Osborn, and Peter Parker waking up in his organic webbing. Peter's powers developed through dreamlike transformations, and he used organic web shooters disguised as mechanical ones. After the tragic death of Uncle Ben, Peter pursued criminals like a vigilante. Cameron's main villain was Carlton Strand, a new version of Electro. Leonardo DiCaprio was also considered for Peter Parker, but the film was never made, making Cameron's vision a notable what-if. In July 2013, 20th Century Fox announced plans for an X-Force movie, with Jeff Wadlow set to write and direct. By December, Rob Liefeld confirmed Cable and Deadpool would be included in the film. The film was aimed to be released in 2017, and in late 2015, concept art showed a team with Cable, Domino, Warpath, Cannonball, and Farrell. By early 2016, Ryan Reynolds expressed hope for Deadpool's appearance, and producer Simon Kinberg supported an R-rated tone. By mid-2016, the interest in including X-23 and rumors of Psylocke, though Olivia Munn's involvement was unconfirmed. In February 2017, Reynolds co-wrote the script with Joe Carnahan, but Drew Goddard later took over. Filming was planned for October 2018, but development was paused in January 2019 as Disney's acquisition of Fox approached completion. The X-Force film was cancelled after Disney acquired 21st Century Fox in March of that year. A lot of us probably think of Iron Man as Robert Downey Jr., but originally it could have been Tom Cruise. If Tom Cruise had been cast as Iron Man, the Marvel Cinematic Universe might have been completely different, as this was actually slated to be in the 1990s. Cruise wanted to star in and produce an Iron Man film, long before Robert Downey Jr. and even Universal Studios had the rights in 1990, and hired Stuart Gordon to direct a darker version of Tony Stark. Inspired by The Dark Knight Returns, featuring an older Stark played possibly by Clint Eastwood or Paul Newman, however, creative disagreements and issues with other films led to its cancellation. Later, Fox took over the rights and worked with Jeff Vintar and Stan Lee to refresh the story, focusing on a much younger Tony Stark and moving away from the weapons manufacturing theme. Nicolas Cage considered the role, but then left for Tim Burton's Superman project, paving the way for Cruise to return. Cruise's version would have showcased a modern action plot centered on post-Cold War themes. Stark would change Stark Industries into focus more on humanitarian projects and technologies, developing the Redeemer armor for rescue. Stark would face challenges from his ambitious VP, Jeremy Bland, and the villain, MODOK. After surviving an assassination attempt, Stark became Iron Man, taking on espionage missions and internal betrayals. Ultimately rejecting MODOK's vision and teaming up with Pepper Potts to defeat him, the film would end with Stark accepting his identity as Iron Man while pursued by the law, hinting at sequels. It was an ambitious and creative film that sadly never happened because of budget and creative differences. In December 2004, 20th Century Fox hired Sheldon Turner to create a spin-off film about Magneto. Envisioned as The Pianist meets X-Men, this movie was to take place between 1939 and 1955, focusing on Magneto's survival in Auschwitz and his shift from being a victim to a hunter of Nazi war criminals. He meets a young Charles Xavier who is a soldier, and their friendship deteriorates as Magneto seeks revenge. Setting the stage for their future conflict, Magneto, a key villain in the X-Men universe, was intended to lead the film. By May 2006, Ian McKellen, the actor who previously played Magneto, showed interest in returning using digital de-aging techniques. Producer Lauren Scholler Donner noted that importance of McKellen in framing the film, originally meant to unfold through flashbacks. However, when David S. Goyer became director in April 2007, the approach changed to casting younger actors, with McKellen appearing only at the beginning and end. Production was planned in Australia with a 2009 release, but the Writers Guild of America strike delayed it by April 2008. concept art was underway, and by June, the film's title was changed to X-Men Origins, this time starting the storyline in 1961. In December 2008, Goyer linked the film's production to the success of Wolverine. By October 2009, McKellen announced he would not return. Donner suggested the film might not be made, placing it low on the studio's priority list. On August 26, 2010, Donner stated in an interview that many ideas from the Magneto film were integrated into X-Men First Class. She confirmed elements of Goyer's original script were included in the First Class storyline, which replaced the standalone Magneto project with a more broader origin story for both Xavier and Magneto. The journey to adapt Namor the Submariner into a film has been lengthy and complex. It started in 1997 when filmmaker Philip Kaufman began talks with Marvel Studios to develop a Namor movie. In 1999, he sought Batman screenwriter Sam Hamm to write the script, but progress stalled. Saban Entertainment, who are known to have ownership of the Power Rangers, became a partner with Marvel, and a new script was written by Randall Franks by 2001. Universal Pictures took over the project and hired David Self for a new screenplay aiming for a mid-2004 release. However, the process slowed down and director Chris Columbus entered the project in 2004, with the release date pushed to 2007. After Columbus left in 2005, Jonathan Mustow took over in 2006 for years. The film's rights were unclear, and in 2012, Marvel's Joe Quesada thought the rights had returned to Marvel, but in 2013, Kevin Feige stated that they still belong to Universal. Eventually, on June 3, 2014, it was confirmed that Marvel had regained the rights. Joe Quesada announced on June 2, 2016 that the rights were officially back with Marvel. Despite ongoing complexities, Namor finally debuted in Black Panther: Wakanda Forever in 2022, suggesting that the rights issue was finally resolved. Apparently, there was going to be a Fantastic Four number 3, being a sequel to Fantastic Four, the second movie. The sequel, which was supposed to be Fantastic Four 3, never progressed beyond the planning stage due to the failure of the previous film, Rise of the Silver Surfer. Initially, there were ideas for Jamie Hansu to play Black Panther, but Marvel held its rights. Potential villains were Puppet Master or Annihilus, and Franklin Richards might have been introduced, along with a romance storyline between Alicia Masters and Van Grimm. Ultimately, the cast was unwilling to return after the failure of Fantastic Four 2. And speaking of sequels, there was eventually going to be a Daredevil 2. After the release of the first Daredevil in 2003, cast members expressed mixed feelings about returning to their roles. Michael Clark Duncan explained his character's physical transformation by saying Kingpin trained in prison, accounting for his real-life weight loss, and he was open to returning without gaining weight unless offered $20 million. Ben Affleck, who filmed a cameo for Elektra at Jennifer Garner's request, stated in 2004 that he would only reprise his role if the studio pursued darker, more serious storylines inspired by Kevin Smith's Daredevil comics. However, by 2006, Affleck had soured on the superhero experience, calling it humiliating, and ultimately deciding not to return. Due to the poor box office performance and negative reception, especially to Elektra, plans for Daredevil 2 were scrapped, leaving the original film to remain a standalone. The character disappeared from live action for 8 years until Netflix rebooted the franchise with a darker, critically acclaimed series that ran for 3 seasons before being cancelled and later brought back via Disney+. Ben Affleck eventually returned, reprising a superhero role, this time as Batman, premiering in Batman vs Superman, and Jennifer Garner returned as Elektra in Deadpool and Wolverine, but Affleck's Daredevil was left behind in the void. In 1989, USC film students Eric Fleming and Robert Letterman created a short, CGI-based Silver Surfer film to demonstrate the feasibility of bringing the character to life on screen. Premiering in 1993, the project garnered attention from major studios and helped spark interest in a feature-length adaptation. However, despite this early momentum, several attempts to develop a Silver Surfer film stalled. Quentin Tarantino submitted a script in 1992 but was turned down, and another script by Andrew Kevin Walker for 20th Century Fox in 2000 also went nowhere. In 2007, Fox hired Babylon 5 creator J. Michael Straczynski to write a spin-off following the character's appearance in Fantastic Four 2, but by 2009, Straczynski expressed doubts that the project would proceed. The script was meant to serve as both a sequel and an origin story, remaining faithful to the comic book version of the Surfer, where he becomes Galactus' herald to save his home planet and beloved. The film emphasized the Surfer's board was integral to his power and a signal to Galactus. Director Tim Story intentionally depicted Galactus as a cosmic cloud in Fantastic Four sequel to leave room for a more impactful debut in a future Silver Surfer film. Later, comic book writer Brian K. Vaughan was brought on for a new script, suggesting renewed interest, though a full production has yet to materialize, and we won't see the Silver Surfer until their return in Fantastic Four for Steps. The Blade reboot was initially believed to be only delayed when removed from Marvel Studios' release schedule, but new reports now indicate that the project is on indefinite hold. Although production was once planned to begin in the UK later this year, that no longer appears likely, as Eric Pearson, the sixth writer assigned to the film, reportedly delivered a draft that pleased all parties involved, yet the delay seems to stem from Marvel's strategic shift toward multiverse-focused storylines particularly to lead up for Avengers Doomsday and Secret Wars. Rather than any script issues, there's also speculation that strong response to Wesley Snipes' appearance in Deadpool and Wolverine may have inspired Marvel to consider a multiverse approach for Blade, potentially bringing back both Snipes and Mahershala Ali's version of the character. Despite the project being on hold, Mahershala Ali has expressed continuous optimism, saying he's encouraged by the progress and those involved in writing and directing. The current director, who stepped in after Bassam Tariq's departure, confirmed that this version of Blade is planned as a darker R-rated film, exploring the character's raw and intense nature. And while originally slated for a release in November 2025, the project, while originally being slated for a release in November of 2025, still has potential to be released later on the years. In 2004, Lionsgate Entertainment began developing a Black Widow film centered on Natasha Romanoff's character, with David Hayter attached as screenwriter and director. However, after several solo female-led action films like Blood Rain, Ultraviolet, and Aeon Flux underdeveloped on the box office, Lionsgate lost interest and ultimately cancelled the project. As a result, the rights to the character reverted to Marvel Studios, and after Natasha Romanoff's live-action debut in Iron Man 2, Marvel expressed renewed interest in a solo film, with development officially beginning in 2014, with Jack Schaffer hired to write the script in 2018, and Kate Shortland brought on as a director later that year, with the film, starring Scarlett Johansson, finally being released in both theaters and on Disney Plus on July 9th, 2021. Sony Pictures initially aimed for the Amazing Spider-Man series to start a larger cinematic universe to compete with the MCU. In June 2013, The Amazing Spider-Man 3 was scheduled for release in 2016, with a fourth film planned for 2018. However, after The Amazing Spider-Man 2 received mixed reviews and poor box office performance, the franchise's future became uncertain. Both Mark Webb and Andrew Garfield expressed interest in returning for the third film, but were uncertain about future projects. The Amazing Spider-Man 3 would explore Peter's grief over Gwen Stacy's death, highlighting themes of guilt and rage. Webb wanted to include the symbiote in the story, and there were ideas for a serum that could resurrect the dead, possibly bringing back Captain Stacy and Gwen, or leading to Gwen becoming Carnage. Other concepts involve Peter meeting Mary Jane Watson during counseling, and deleted scenes from Amazing Spider-Man 2 hinted at Richard Parker's return. However, all plans were abandoned when Sony collaborated with Marvel Studios in 2015. Sony's Sinister Six was a planned spin-off of the Amazing Spider-Man universe. Written and directed by Drew Goddard, it was designed as a villain-focused film, making villains the main characters, and inspired by movies like The Dirty Dozen and Reservoir Dogs. This team would feature Spider-Man villains like Dr. Octopus, Vulture, and Mysterio, exploring their backgrounds and motivations, with Spider-Man appearing only briefly, possibly as the antagonist. Norman Osborn would play a key role despite his death in Amazing Spider-Man 2, with a deleted scene suggesting his cryogenically preserved head in an Oscorp lab, indicating potential resurrection. The film aimed to expand the Spider-Man story, but was of course cancelled after the failure of Spider-Man 2. And to expand this, Sony had ambitious plans for a sprawling Spider-Man cinematic universe as a whole, following Spider-Man 2, including expanded roles for side characters like Felicia Hardy, the Black Cat, played by Felicity Jones. She was set to receive her own standalone film, alongside other proposed projects like a Venom and Carnage film, and an unusual Aunt May prequel described as a spy drama in the vein of Agent Carter. Andrew Garfield, who portrayed Spider-Man, was reportedly eager to pass the mantle to Miles Morales in future installments, reflecting an early openness to more diverse heroes. However, the critical and commercial underperformance of The Amazing Spider-Man 2 caused Sony to reassess its plans. Executives began to realize they need a structured long-term strategy, leading to an internal proposal for a 5-film, Phase 1, MCU-styled cinematic universe. One major idea was to launch the universe with a Kraven the Hunter prequel, which would explore Norman Osborn's declining health and introduce Kraven as a hired mercenary to capture Spider-Man for his potentially curative blood, ultimately leading to Norman's transformation into the Green Goblin. Other proposed entries included a Sinister Six, as I mentioned, a Spider-Man 2099 film starring a futuristic Miguel O'Hara, and a more serious Venom origin film. The plan culminated in a team-up finale where Spider-Man, Black Cat, Venom, and Spider-Man 2099 would unite in battle against Carnage. Despite the creative ambition, Sony lacked direction and confidence that led them to scrap the plans and ultimately partner with Marvel Studios, shelving most of the projects including the Black Cat and Spider-Man 2099 film. And finally, for the failed Sony projects, yes, there was going to be a Venom Carnage film in 2012. Sony remained committed to developing a Venom film, aiming to build on the momentum of this Amazing Spider-Man reboot. Discussions were held with Josh Trank to direct after Gary Ross left the project. Producers Avi Arad and Matt Tolmach envisioned Venom as a standalone Eddie Brock story, but hinted at potential crossovers with Spider-Man of that universe. Inspired by the success of the Avengers, in December 2013, Sony formally announced plans for an expanded Spider-Man cinematic universe, starting with The Amazing Spider-Man 2. Arad and Tolmach led the initiative, bringing in Alex Kurtzman, Roberto Orsi, and Ed Solomon to write the Venom script, with Kurtzman also set to direct. Initially, Venom was scheduled to release after The Amazing Spider-Man 3 in 2016 and before a planned fourth installment. However, after The Amazing Spider-Man 2 bombed, Sony reconsidered its strategy, with the third Spider-Man film being delayed to 2018 and Venom Carnage being pushed forward to 2017, with Kurtzman Spider-Man and Solomon still attached, in early 2015 Sony and Marvel Studios announced a partnership to integrate Spider-Man into the Marvel Cinematic Universe, effectively rebooting the character. But with them still wanting to make a Venom film, they decided to still go on with the projects, and with a few tweaks, we got the Venom film starring Tom Hardy in 2018 and its sequels. In the mid-1990s, New Line Cinema acquired the film rights to several Marvel characters, including Venom. Before Marvel Cinematic Universe was formally established, screenwriter David S. Goyer, who is best known for Blade, was hired to write a standalone Venom film that excluded Spider-Man due to rights issues. The story featured Eddie Brock and Cletus Cassidy as orphans from a psychiatric hospital, with Cassidy evolving into the villain Carnage. The plot followed Brock's transformation into Venom after bonding with a symbiote that crash-landed on Earth, while Carnage incited chaos through a cult-like uprising. The film included a subplot about a secret agency called the Vault attempting to weaponize the symbiotes. Ultimately, the story concluded with a dramatic showdown between Venom and Carnage at the old hospital, ending in a fiery explosion that seemingly destroyed both the symbiotes. Despite its ambitious scope and rumored casting of Dolph Lundgren, the project never moved forward. The film's cancellation was due to several factors, including the transfer of character rights to Sony Pictures and technological limitations of the late 90s, which made rendering convincing CGI symbiotes difficult on a modern budget. David Goyer later admitted that he considered the script subpar, and with Sony eventually introducing Venom in Spider-Man 3, portrayed by Topher Grace, New Line's vision faded into obscurity, the idea of Venom being revived later on in 2018. Channing Tatum was first linked to the role of Gambit in the early 2010s, eventually being officially announced as the lead for a solo Gambit film by 2014. The movie was originally planned to spin out of X-Men Apocalypse, with Tatum's character making a cameo appearance before leading his own standalone origin story. Tatum was highly passionate about the project, even promoting it at San Diego Comic-Con and staying committed through multiple delays. The film was initially greenlit with Joss Zuidemer as the writer, adapting a story by Gambit's creator, Chris Claremont. Rupert Wyatt signed on as a director, sharing Tatum's vision, but Fox's panic over the failure of Fantastic Four 2015 led to the budget cuts and creative disagreements, forcing Wyatt to exit. Following Wyatt's departure, the Gambit movie entered development hell, going through a revolving door of directors including Doug Liman and Gore Verbinski. Each director either clashed with the studio over the script or left due to creative differences. At one point, Fox reimagined the film as an R-rated romantic action comedy in the spirit of Mr. and Mrs. Smith, leading into Gambit's womanizing hustler persona. Tatum and his producing partner, Reed Carlin, even tried to co-direct the movie themselves, but Fox was hesitant since neither had directed a feature before. Despite script rewrites and casting considerations, the film kept stalling, and Gambit's planned role in X-Men Apocalypse post-credits scene was replaced with a teaser for the Essex Corporation. The final blow came when Disney acquired 21st Century Fox, and in 2019 they officially cancelled the Gambit film. Although the standalone film never materialized, Tatum eventually got his chance to play Gambit in Deadpool and Wolverine, and is set to return in Avengers Doomsday 2026. Even though we have the Bat TV show, Inhumans was originally planned as a Marvel Studios film based on the comic book series of that same name. Announced on August 12, 2014, the project generated buzz when Vin Diesel was hinted that he might portray Black Bolt. Initially slated for a November 2, 2018 release, the film's development reportedly began as early as 2011 and gained traction over the following years. However, by 2016, the movie was removed from Marvel's release schedule, and despite not being officially cancelled at the time, progress stalled and early drafts were discarded, with Vin Diesel eventually playing Groot. The film's cancellation was never formally explained, though several contributing factors have been suggested, like the integration of Spider-Man into the MCU, pushing the film's release back to 2019, only to be delayed again due to scheduling conflicts with other major Disney releases, like Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny. Ultimately, Disney and Marvel decided to shelve the film entirely and rework the concept into a TV series. The resulting Inhumans show aired on ABC in 2017, but was critically panned and cancelled after just 8 episodes. Kevin Feige also later stated that the film was once intended for Phase 4 of the MCU, but sadly never happened. In July 22, Marvel Studios announced Avengers: The Kang Dynasty during their Hall H panel at San Diego Comic-Con. This film will be the first two to conclude Phase 6 of the MCU and the Multiverse Saga alongside the Avengers: Secret Wars. Later that month, Destin Daniel Cretton was confirmed as the director of Kang Dynasty after previously directing Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings. In September 2022, Jeff Loveness was hired to write the film following his work on Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania, which featured Kang the Conqueror. Originally, the Kang Dynasty and Secret Wars were scheduled for May 2025, but were pushed back to May 2026 and May 2027 due to the 2023 Writers Guild of America strike. And in March 2023, Jonathan Majors, who played Kang, was arrested on charges of physical harassment and assault. By his arraignment, Marvel had not discussed alternatives for the character. In November 2023, Cretton left the project and Loveness was let go as the film's focus shifted away from Kang due to Majors' legal issues. In March 2024, Majors was found guilty, leading Disney and Marvel to end the relationship with him. And in July 2024, Marvel announced Avengers Doomsday with Robert Downey Jr. as Dr. Doom and the Russo brothers directing it, being the replacement film for the original Kang Dynasty. In 1984, George Lucas said he would create an animated film based on a character by Steve Gerber using lines from Bill Mantlo. Originally, directors and producers wanted the film to be animated, but a deal with Universal Universal Pictures required a live-action movie. This led to the 1986 Howard the Duck film that failed at the box office. Katz noted an animated version would have taken too long and cost too much money, and in 2019, a TV series adaptation for Hulu was announced but was also later cancelled. In February 2012, director Mark Neveldine and Brian Taylor talked about making Ghost Rider 3, possibly with a different director. Neveldine mentioned that Nicolas Cage was interested in returning for another Ghost Rider film, depending on the success of Ghost Rider 2. In March 2013, Cage stated that while a third installment was possible, he would likely not be involved. He also suggested that a female Ghost Rider could be interesting, but expressed that he felt done with the role. In May 2013, the film rights returned to Marvel Studios, and the character Robbie Reyes appeared in the 4th season of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., where the MCU version of Johnny Blaze helps him gain Ghost Rider powers. Iron Man 4 was ultimately never made due to Marvel Studios' strategic shift toward team-focused storytelling within the MCU. After Iron Man 3, the studio led by Kevin Feige integrated Tony Stark more deeply into ensemble films like Avengers Age of Ultron and Captain America Civil War. Rather than continuing his solo adventures, Robert Downey Jr.'s original contract ended after the third Iron Man film, and although he agreed to appear in supporting roles in other MCU projects, Marvel chose to invest in expanding to other hero stories, like Spider-Man and Shang-Chi, where even Iron Man's influence was still felt. High production costs and Downey Jr.'s salary also likely factored into the decision not to pursue a fourth standalone film. Even though apparently RDJ expressed interest in a potential Iron Man 4 and even hoped Mel Gibson would direct the project, but it never materialized. Marvel's Avengers nearly turned out a very different film from the blockbuster we know today. Originally, Jon Favreau, director of Iron Man, was slated to helm the Avengers and had envisioned the third Iron Man movie as the grand team-up event. However, after clashing with Marvel during the rushed and studio-heavy production of Iron Man 2, Favreau lost interest in continuing under such restrictions. Marvel, seeking a less expensive and more controllable director, hired Joss Whedon instead. Early drafts of the film written by Zach Penn included drastically different elements such as Wasp being part of the core team instead of Black Widow, Red Skull as the villain instead of Loki, and a reduced role for Thor due to concerns about blending fantasy and tech. Penn had also hoped Edward Norton would reprise his role as Bruce Banner, but tension stemming from Norton's continuous script rewrites during The Incredible Hulk led to his departure. This left Marvel scrambling to revise the script to either minimize Banner's role or recast the character, eventually landing on Mark Ruffalo. When Whedon took over, he discarded most of Penn's work, starting fresh while keeping Loki as the antagonist per Kevin Feige's request. Although Penn received a story credit, Whedon's complete rewrite combined with Ruffalo's new portrayal and motion capture performance reshaped the film into the version eventually audiences saw. After years of delays and rewrites, Ang Lee began developing the Hulk movie in the early 2000s. He even turned down directing Terminator 3 to focus on this project. By then, CGI technology had improved enough for Lee to use motion capture, performing the Hulk's movements himself. Initially, Lee wanted Billy Crudup for the role of Bruce Banner, but after Crudup dropped out, Eric Bana took over. Bana described the film set as very serious and somber, as Lee aimed to create a Greek tragedy instead of a typical superhero film. Critic Roger Ebert praised Lee's focus on the emotional themes, such as Bruce's troubled relationship with his father, instead of just focusing on action scenes. One of Lee's unique stylistic choices was using comic book style split screens, which received mixed reviews. However, Hulk struggled because it was released right after Sam Raimi's Spider-Man, leading audiences to expect a similar lighthearted superhero film. Instead, they encountered a darker story about childhood trauma and suppressed anger. Co-writer James Schmoz recognized the early issues, worrying that Spider-Man had already shaped audiences' expectations for a superhero movie film. Despite a strong box office opening, Hulk saw a significant decline in ticket sales. Lee and Schmoz began planning a sequel. Their idea for Hulk 2 featured Bruce Banner hiding on a Native American reservation affected by toxic gamma radiation from illegal dumping. Banner would learn the source of the radiation was due to government actions. The sequel would include Glenn Talbot, who had survived injuries from the first film, along with Samuel Stearns, turning into the villain known as the Leader. Talbot, seeking revenge, would become the Abomination through a Gamma Super Soldier program. Meanwhile, Banner would battle his darker alter ego, the Grey Hulk, who was more intelligent but weaker than the Green Hulk. As Grey Hulk's personality took over Banner, there would have to have been a fight to regain control and unleash the Green Hulk to save the reservation. Initially, Marvel supported the sequel, setting a May 2005 release date, but it never happened. And in January 2006, Avi Arad announced that Marvel would make a new Hulk film while Universal only retained distribution rights. Marvel ultimately decided to move away from Ang Lee's vision, seeing it as a standalone story rather than a franchise starter. They wanted the next film to align more with fan expectations from the comics and TV series. Zach Penn was brought in to write what became The Incredible Hulk. As Iron Man launched the MCU in 2008, this new film aimed for a similar tone. Director Louis Leterrier, who originally wanted to direct Iron Man, was then assigned to direct The Incredible Hulk. Leterrier felt that the script needed further work and approached Edward Norton to play Bruce Banner. A solo War Machine movie was once in development following the events of Iron Man 2. With Don Cheadle reprising his role as James Rhodes, the plot, while never fully revealed, would have centered on Rhodey going rogue on becoming a fugitive to carry out a morally driven but politically dangerous mission. Despite early work on the project, including a script by Robert Cole, who eventually co-wrote Black Panther, the film was ultimately shelved because its storyline storyline conflicted with Rhodey's arc in Iron Man 3. Although the original movie was cancelled, War Machine remained an active part of the MCU, appearing in various team-based films, and potentially being in his own standalone project known as Armor Wars. Both Spider-Man Homecoming and Black Panther reportedly considered using Kraven the Hunter as a villain during early development stages. Kraven, a classic Spider-Man adversary known for his obsession with big game hunting and proving himself in general against stronger enemies, was seen as a compelling choice for his intense physical presence and moral complexity. For Spider-Man Homecoming, the creative team explored multiple villain options before ultimately choosing the Vulture, while Kraven remained on a short list for future films. Similarly, Black Panther director Ryan Coogler expressed interest in using Kraven, seeing potential in pitting the character's predatory instincts against T'Challa. However, due to the complicated rights issues and plans to keep Kraven available for Sony's own Spider-Man universe, the idea was ultimately dropped. In the early 1990s, filmmaker Charles Band was thought to have the rights to make a Doctor Strange movie. When those rights lapsed, screenwriter C. Courtney Joyner joined the project, creating a new character and story not tied to Marvel. Jack Kirby provided concept art for the main character. The film Dr. Mordred was released by Full Moon Pictures and was similar to Doctor Strange, leading many to think it was a rebranded Marvel movie. However, in 2022, Joyner clarified that Dr. Mordred was never meant to be Doctor Strange and was originally conceived as Doctor or Mr. Mortalis by Kirby. He noted that there was no direct connection to the comic despite similarities. In December 2020, Kevin Feige from Marvel Studios announced the new series Secret Invasion. The series is based on the 2008-2009 comic storyline and is described as a big crossover event series connecting to future MCU films. Marvel decided on a series format instead of a film to explore new ideas. Bradstreet worked on the script for about a year before being replaced by Brian Tucker. Directors were being selected by April 2021, with Thomas Basucha and Ali Salim initially set to direct, with Basucha leaving due to scheduling conflicts, leaving Salim to direct all 6 episodes. The series faced pre-production issues, and Jonathan Schwartz got involved to help it stay on schedule. In the 1990s, Wesley Snipes pursued a Black Panther film, imagining an advanced African kingdom like Marvel's 2018 movie. He acquired the rights and gathered a team, but the project faced several issues, like the character's lack of recognition, confusion with the Black Panther Party, and disagreements with director John Singleton, who wanted the link to story to civil rights movement. The era's limited technology also made it hard to achieve the futuristic vision of Wakanda, and although the film never happened, Snipes later was a part of the Blade franchise, which helped influence superhero films that eventually supported the 2018 Black Panther film. The Nova project in the Marvel Cinematic Universe has been put on indefinite hold, effectively canceling its development for the near future. It was first hinted at in 2014 with the Nova Corps in Guardians of the Galaxy and introducing Richard Rider, Nova Prime in Marvel's Avengers, Infinity War, and Endgame. But the cancellation shows that Marvel Studios was shifting to prioritize quality over quantity after mixed reviews of recent releases like Captain Marvel. For years, Marvel fans have wanted a standalone Hulk film, especially one based on the popular comic World War Hulk. However, legal issues with Universal Pictures have delayed any solo projects, with Universal owning the distribution rights to a standalone Hulk movie, preventing Marvel from releasing it through Disney without their involvement. Marvel Studios started planning a Runaways film in May 2008, with Brian K. Vaughan writing the screenplay and Peter Sollett as the director. By 2010, Drew Pearce worked on the script, but the project was shelved in October 2010 to focus on the Avengers. Although there was hopes for the Runaways during Marvel's Phase 3, the film never happened, and in 2014, Kevin Feige mentioned that the script was still with Marvel, and the ideas of the Runaways might be adapted for a film or TV, but they couldn't approve all of them in development, and in August 2016, a deal with Hulu led to a Runaways streaming series, which premiered in November 2017 and running for 3 seasons, ending in December 2019. After the disappointing response of Spider-Man 3, director Sam Raimi wanted to make Spider-Man 4 to return to his original vision. Spider-Man 3 faced issues from studio interference, particularly from producer Avi Arad, who insisted on including Venom and Gwen Stacy, leading to a big cluttered mess. Raimi aimed for a 4th film featuring the Vulture as the main villain with a more focused story. John Malkovich was considered for the Vulture, and Anne Hathaway was set up to play Felicia Hardy, who would have transformed into the Vultress instead of the Black Cat after her father's death by Spider-Man. Despite significant development and casting plans, Spider-Man 4 never happened. Sam Raimi was dissatisfied with the script after hiring 4 screenwriters, and while Tobey Maguire and Kirsten Dunst were open to returning, they sought larger pay raises, creative differences, and budget issues led to Raimi to step back, and Sony deciding to reboot it with The Amazing Spider-Man. Before the release of Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness, fans speculated about how many potential cameos it could be included in, including Tom Cruise as Iron Man, and an idea to connect the old casting rumors with the Illuminati storyline. Deadpool was also a favorite with plans for a cameo that Variety reported but was ultimately cut. Other speculated cameos including Daniel Craig as Mr. Fantastic, Nicolas Cage returning as Ghost Rider, and Hugh Jackman returning as Wolverine, and among others like Jonathan Majors as a variant of He Who Remains. Despite the excitement, these cameos were removed due to the story being needed, and director Sam Raimi and writer Michael Waldron prioritizing the film's narrative over fan expectations. In the early 1990s, producer Gail Ann Hurd obtained the rights to create a Hulk movie at Universal Studios. She focused on the character's dual identity struggle instead of a typical superhero film, and with the hired first-time screenwriter John Turman, who wrote 10 drafts based on Tales to Astonish. While many of his ideas were changed or rejected, some elements influenced future versions after several disappointing rewrites. Hurd switched Turman with her husband, Jonathan Hensley, who who introduced a new version that introduced gamma experiments on death row inmates, insect-humanoid hybrids, and a plot about Mars colonization. Bruce Banner turned into the Hulk during a disastrous experiment, leading to a fight against mutated inmates. Despite advancements like large animatronics and transformation effects, the film encountered significant issues. Director Joe Johnston left for another project, and Universal grew worried about the budget exceeding $100 million, especially with the casting, as the director wanted Johnny Depp to be Bruce Banner. Before his untimely death, Ryan Coogler finished the script for Black Panther: Wakanda Forever with Joe Robert Cole. He asked Chadwick Boseman if he wanted to read it before studio notes, with Boseman declining, feeling too tired due to his illness. Although he kept it private, his co-star Letitia Wright learned that he had joked about the script's length, showing his spirit. Tragically, Boseman did pass away from colon cancer shortly after, leaving those around him shocked. Originally, the sequel was meant to be a father-son story, focusing on T'Challa's relationship with his son, Toussaint, after returning from the blimp. Following Boseman's death, Marvel decided not to recast T'Challa and shifted the story to Shuri as the new Black Panther. The original Ant-Man film is considered a major what-if in the cinematic universe due to the exit of director Edgar Wright, who had been working on the project since the early 2000s. Wright envisioned Ant-Man as a character-driven heist film influenced by Elmore Leonard's crime stories with a focused style on humor. However, the delays in Wright's other commitments allowed Marvel to shift their directions and integrate the film into a larger cinematic universe. This led to conflicts and ultimately to Wright leaving the project, with Marvel rewriting the script without his input. Wright's departure changed the film significantly, with his version focusing on Scott Lang, criminal past, and included a flashback of Hank Pym from the 1960s, while some elements remained. Only about 30% of Wright's script was used. Marvel's version changed Lang's character, adding the quantum realm, and included MCU references, altering the film into a more traditional Marvel movie. Captain Marvel was first planned to make a cameo in Avengers Age of Ultron, with a stand-in actress appearing in an alternate ending scene that was not included in the film's release. The scene was later revealed in an Infinity Saga box set, where discussions on Reddit confirmed that the blonde woman represented Captain Marvel. Director Joss Whedon intended to tease her appearance, but Kevin Feige rejected this, wanting a proper introduction. Delaying her debut proved beneficial, as a rushed appearance would have confused audiences and harmed her solo film even more. Silver and Black was an unproduced superhero film focusing on Marvel characters Silver Sable and the Black Cat. The film was part of Sony's Spider-Man universe, set to direct by Gina Prince Bythewood, who aimed for a diverse cast and a unique tone. The project began development in 2017, as a female-led spin-off production was planned for 2018, with a storyline exploring the character's past and featuring villains like the Chameleon and Tombstone. However, the project faced delays due to script dissatisfaction. Efforts like location scouting were made, but Sony removed the film from the release schedule in 2018, with the film being later cancelled. Before Disney bought 20th Century Fox, a superhero crossover movie featuring the X-Men, Fantastic Four, Deadpool, and Daredevil seemed unlikely. Marvel Studios had success with the Avengers in 2012, but Fox had plans for a crossover of themselves. In the early 2010s, screenwriters Zack Stentz and Ashley Edward Miller started working on a Fox-Marvel crossover based on Marvel's Civil War comic. The story would focus on a superhero registration act caused by Johnny Storm, the Human Torch, splitting heroes like Wolverine and Mr. Fantastic into opposing teams. The plans included a fight between Wolverine and Mr. Fantastic, and post-credits scene introducing the Skrulls, with Paul Greengrass as the preferred director. However, the project was abandoned due to lack of team movie experience, casting challenges, and Fox shifting focus to individual franchises. And by 2012, Fox lost rights to Daredevil and was unsure about Deadpool's appeal until test footage leaked later. Noah Hawley, the creator of Legion, has nearly finished a script for a Doctor Doom movie. Described as a Cold War geopolitical movie, the story takes place 10 years after Doom has isolated himself in Latveria and involves him in inviting a female journalist to be his voice to the outside world. It explores the ambiguous morality of Doctor Doom, questioning if he is a villain or a misunderstood leader. Originally developed under Fox, the film's status changed with Disney's acquisition of Fox. Hawley shared a SXW that Marvel Studios president Kevin Feige asked about the script but hasn't followed up. In the early 1990s, a live-action She-Hulk film starring Bridget Nielsen was nearly brought to life, with Larry Cohen directing and script by Jaws writer Carl Gottlieb. Originating from a failed attempt to launch a She-Hulk TV series, promotional images show Nielsen in full costume, suggesting the production reached a relatively advanced stage compared to other scrapped Marvel projects of the time. However, despite this progress, the film never received sufficient investor backing and was quietly cancelled, likely due to Marvel's poor cinematic track record in the pre-MCU era and budget constraints, including the inability to fund She-Hulk's signature flying car prior to the movie attempt. Marvel and New World Productions had tried to develop She-Hulk for television, going as far as filming scenes in the Virgin Islands and casting several actresses before cancelling the project. Sony considered a crossover between Jared Leto's Morbius and Mahershala Ali's Blade, aiming to link its Spider-Man universe with the MCU through a vampire story. This crossover made sense since both characters are based on Marvel comics where they both interact, Morbius the living vampire and Blade the vampire hunter. However, the idea did not go forward, likely due to the rights and creative issues between Sony and Marvel. Originally, Captain America 3 was meant to show Steve Rogers reuniting with Bucky Barnes, continuing their emotional story from the Winter Soldier, but this time the plot centered on a mind control device called the Mad Bomb, which caused people, including allies like Sam Wilson and Natasha, to go into rage. The story would have tackled moral dilemmas as Cap tried to stop the chaos without harming the affected people, maintaining the grounded tone and political intrigue of the Winter Soldier, leading to a dramatic battle with friends turned enemies. However, Marvel Studios president Kevin Feige thought that the Mad Bomb storyline wasn't grand enough, especially with Batman vs Superman coming out. He pushed to replace it with Civil War and transforming the film into a hero versus hero blockbuster. Apparently, there was going to be a Marvel Zombies live action project that was rumored to be in development at Marvel Studios, potentially as a darker R-rated version of the comic book series where Marvel heroes became zombies. And while this still hasn't been hinted to be real, there has been an appearance of Marvel Zombies as it appeared on the animation What If on Disney+. Just like the Mad Bomb story, Falcon and the Winter Soldier was going to have a different storyline, with them tackling a virus storyline, with an early idea by Disney Plus series involving a global pandemic from a manufactured virus released by the villain group, the Flag Smashers, to disrupt the government. Due to the real-world COVID-19 pandemic, Marvel changed this plot to avoid insensitivity, with some elements remaining, but the virus narrative was being minimized, causing pacing issues into the series. In April 2021, Marvel announced a fourth Captain America film, this time starring Sam Wilson as the new Captain America. Originally titled Captain America New World Order, when revealed at the San Diego Comic-Con in 2022, the title was officially changed in 2023 to Brave New World due to the phrase New World Order being associated with real-world conspiracy theories and anti-Semitic rhetoric. In the early 2000s, Fox hired director Chris Columbus, known for Home Alone and the first two Harry Potter films, to adapt the Fantastic Four. Columbus, a longtime Marvel fan, worked with writer Michael Franz to create a new origin story with deeper character relationships and a darker plot. The script removed the traditional love triangle by making Reed and Sue already engaged and changing Victor Von Doom into a Russian scientist who is obsessed with nanotechnology. The hero's transformation comes from a nanotech accident caused by Doom's betrayal, leading to his own horrific change. After returning to Earth, the heroes, now called the Fantastic Four, stop a terrorist attack. Meanwhile, Doom uses his nanotech to control Latveria and plans global domination, leading to a big final battle. The film, unproduced, would have shown Ben Grimm sacrificing his chance to become a human to defeat Dr. Doom. It had an epic blend of action, emotion, and comic accuracy. However, the project was abandoned due to its high $165 million budget and early 2000 CGI limitations, as the script's demands were too ambitious. Marvel's New Warriors was an unaired television pilot developed by Kevin Bigelow for Freeform based on the Marvel Comics superhero team. It was intended to exist within the MCU and featured a comedic half-hour single-camera format. Marvel's first of its kind, the cast included Milana Vayntrub as the Squirrel Girl and Derek Thaler as Mr. Immortal, along with a diverse team of quirky young superheroes, each with unique powers. The pilot, completed by late 2017, was praised internally and reportedly tested very well with executives. It was envisioned as a youth-driven superhero comedy with potential for multiple spin-offs and even included subtle MCU references. Production was spearheaded by Marvel Television and ABC Studios, with Bigelow serving as showrunner and multi-season plan already sketched out. Despite its early promise and strong reception, New Warriors was shelved after Freeform dropped it, citing a lack of available space in their schedule. Marvel attempted to find a new home for the series within Disney's portfolio, even considering Disney Plus and Hulu, but neither opted to pick it up, and by September 2019, the show was officially considered dead. Bigelow revealed behind-the-scenes footage and claimed that the series was blocked due to its LGBTQ+ themes, a claim Marvel denied. While the show never aired, some of its ideas still lived, with Milana Vayntrub later voicing Squirrel Girl in Marvel Rising and Mr. Immortal eventually appearing in She-Hulk Attorney at Law. Before the release of Fan 4 Stick, director Josh Trank said he had to make a better film than the final version, which he felt was not shown to audiences. Reports of Trank's bad behavior on set led to him losing creative control. The studio 20th Century Fox did many reshoots, changing the film significantly from Trank's vision. The project was rushed so Fox could keep the franchise rights, and Trank aimed to create a gritty horror-influenced take on the Fantastic Four, similar to a Cronenberg film. However, conflicts with screenwriter Jeremy Slater and the studio over tone and direction created issues from the start. Trank wanted a body horror sci-fi film about the trauma of superheroes, while Slater and Fox preferred a traditional comic book style movie. Some of Slater's ideas, like major Marvel characters and significant action scenes, were dropped for being too costly. Casting disagreements arose as Trank wanted an all-black Storm family, but the studio cast Kate Mara instead, with Mara reported a negative experience with Trank, who later regretted not advocating for his vision. Ultimately, the film turns into a mix of conflicting ideas, thwarting Trank's dark original concept. Finally, in 1983, producer Bern Eichner showed interest in making a Fantastic Four film and secured the rights from Marvel in 1986 for about $250,000. When a big-budget film could not be completed before the rights expired in 1992, Eichner collaborated with a low-budget filmmaker, Roger Corman, to create a quick $1 million version to meet contract requirements. Production started in late 1992 and wrapped up within weeks, with the cast believing that the film would be released. They filmed in various locations in Los Angeles, showcasing dedicated creativity, including a self-funded orchestral score and practical effects for characters like The Thing and Dr. Doom. Despite promotion and a planned premiere in January 1994, the film was suddenly cancelled and producers halted all promotion, resulting in a shelved movie. Speculation arose that it was only made to keep the rights. Stan Lee supported this in 2005, suggesting no one intended to see it. However, Corman and Eichner denied this claim, with Eichner stating Marvel's Avi Arad wanted to buy the film back to protect the Fantastic Four brand and paid to destroy all copies. Still, Eichner kept the rights and eventually produced a successful high-budget version in 2004, leading to the 2005 film and its 2007 sequel. Meanwhile, the 1994 film gained a cult following, being released online despite never being officially released, and with a lot of problems of just the production of the film, there's a documentary that I really suggest you guys to watch that explains way more that happened outside and inside of the film itself. And that, ladies and gentlemen, was 50 cancelled movies, ideas, concepts that never came to fruition. My voice is destroyed, and honestly, there are some movies that I wouldn't honestly mind seeing, some ideas that I kind of wish still were a part of the movie that I wanted to see, and some ideas that honestly, even if it wasn't truly completed, we already still saw it in the modern movies that we've gotten. So, and you know, leave a comment of what you wanted to see. Also leave a comment if you want to see a DC version of this list, because even though it's horrible in my voice, I could still be interested to do it. Follow all my social media, the links will be in the description below, and thank you guys for watching. Bye.